Let's talk some more on the environment. Potential health hazards from a burning wellhead is what the people of Bolobobo community in Warri North local government area of Delta State have been compelled to deal with for some weeks now. The burning wellhead belonging to oil giant Chevron Nigeria Limited was reported to have been blazing since April the 18th, but exacerbated 3 days ago. Our correspondent Vivian Ramadike reports.
Bolobobo is a riverine community and hosts facilities belonging to international oil giant Chevron Nigeria Limited. This community may not be new to pollution as a result of drilling activities, but this particular carbon emanating from a burning wellhead for many days now is one that calls for serious concern. One would wonder how these children, who must go on with their daily activities, are able to cope.
We had another emergency yesterday that the chute has got into the ground and the chute is falling like rain. Whenever it rains, that the chute is falling on the community and the community cannot drink water. Even you can see the river is full with the chute and the fishes that they cannot, even the air has been cold, people cannot breathe. Even you can see most of them cannot get nearer because of the fume that is coming from there.
Fishing is the major occupation here, and the danger this poses on the aquatic life cannot be overemphasized. These women take their protest to the production facility of Chevron.
You can see that the burning of the wellhead and also the gas flare, they are now affecting the community seriously. Even when you come to the community, you cannot stay in the community any longer now. The people are now finding other ways to reside now.
The people need health attention. In fact, they need to relocate the people as it stands now because the air they are breathing is not fit for them to take in. As you can see, that is the reason I'm covering my nose. So please, we are begging Chevron, we are begging the Nigerian government to wade into this situation.
Many oil-rich communities in the Niger Delta region are not new to pollution caused by activities of oil companies in their environs. But for the people of Bolobobo community, they can only hope that help comes their way, and very fast too. Vivian Ramadike, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, Chevron Nigeria Limited has been reacting to the protest by the residents of the affected community, and the company says it is making all efforts to safely put out the fire as soon as possible. An official statement from Chevron Nigeria Limited explains that environmental monitoring by accredited independent environmental consultants is ongoing in the area, with support from regulatory agencies. The statement adds that the fire was actually caused by oil theft, but notwithstanding, the company will ensure that it is put out. Well, that's all from Abuja. We return to our Lagos studio, where Amarachi is standing by.
Thanks, Ibrahim. And when it comes to programming language, it's quite difficult for newcomers in the tech world to understand. But Anuolakbo Karawi, a software developer, has made this easy through Yorulang, a programming language written in Yoruba. This next report shows us what it's all about.
Python, Java, JavaScript and Ruby are examples of special basic languages every programmer should know. They were used to develop software programs, scripts or other sets of instructions for computers to execute. But these languages can seem a bit overwhelming and confusing for a newcomer. Now, with Yorulang, a programming language designed to write small programs using Yoruba, Anuolakbo Karawi makes learning to code easy for indigents of southwestern Nigeria.
For every programming language, and whenever you're starting out, you do need some sort of guidance, rather. And the thing is, with Yorulang, when you see the keywords, like we have some keywords here that is she, which is an if statement in English. And when you read it word after word, it sort of makes sense to you. You don't really have to think too much about the logic because you are reading it in your mother tongue. If you are the type that understands things better in your mother tongue, like I am. The features in Yorulang consist of basic features a programming language should have, like most C-derived programming languages. So, which is Jackie. The documentation is actually quite clear. So it takes it step by step in a sense, but just like every other programming language out there, you still have to have some small guidance on how to do things.
What were the hiccups he faced along the way?
There were some things I had to do that required a lot of something we call recursion. So it's recursion at a very big level, and wrapping my head around that was a bit confusing at the start. Then recursion then had backtracking with it for handling operator precedence. So that was one challenge. Another challenge I faced was trying to get it to import other files within it in a way whereby the file paths will not be difficult for the users of the language to understand. And yeah, I passed that all the time.
Oluwakpo imagined people who think better in Yoruba would find it easier to understand programming as beginners if they could reach the keywords in the language they were most familiar with.
One thing I had in mind when I was creating it is to make it an educational tool, right? So for me, if I can get it to schools for kids that probably don't understand English all that too well, but might want to be interested in programming for some reason. So using Yolang as a map for them to compare. They still have to learn the proper programming languages, but getting into the programming space, understanding it in your mother's tongues can make it easier to understand the languages you want to deal with.
Oluwakpo's aim is to ease the learning process of coding as well as prove that local languages can have a place in the technology sphere.
Business News is up next. Here's Anne Mawodo.
You First. First Bank.
And welcome to the world of business. Low income among Nigerians in rural areas may be a major challenge for financial inclusion policy being pursued through new digital financial services by telecoms companies. And that's according to the Chief Executive of GDL Asset Management, Mr. Kola Ayeye, on our program Business Morning today.
The digital model will make the cost much lower. But in my view, the biggest problem in those places is income. It is not inclusion. A very great NGO here called EFINA has done a financial survey. And for financially excluded people, they said about 37 or 38 million of them. Their median income is 15,000 naira. So if you are earning 15,000, and I guess that's per month, if you are earning 15,000, what incentive is there to bank it, whether it is digital or whether it is with a normal bank account?
Technically, from hand to mouth.
The issue is poverty. I think that if the big players start off looking at the rural areas, they may be disappointed fairly quickly. This is my guess. I mean, the jury is out. And I think that what will then happen is that they may make an attempt to fight in the urban centers.
African Multilateral Financial Institution, we're talking about Afrexim Bank, has signed a $300 million export credit line with Japan Bank for International Corporation, JBIC. In a statement, the credit line looks to provide funds for the import of machinery and equipment from Japanese companies and their overseas affiliates to 51 member countries of Afrexim Bank. The JBIC is a Japanese public financial institution, an export credit agency created in 1999 through the merger of the Japan Export-Import Bank and the Overseas Economic Corporation. Global economic growth is expected to ease to a weaker than expected 2.6% this year before a 2.7% recovery next year. And that's according to the World Bank's June 2019 Global Economic Prospect, which sees emerging and developing markets stabilizing next year. The multilateral bank projects that most countries will move past periods of financial strain in spite of current exposure to trade and financial disruptions. The multilateral bank projects that emerging and developing economies' growth will pick up to 4.6% next year from 4% in 2019. US-China tariffs have been implemented and proposed a could cut global economic output by 0.5% next year. And that's according to the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. The IMF's Managing Director, Christine Lagarde, made this known today at the briefing, a note to G20 finance ministers and central bank governors ahead of the meeting in Japan this weekend. Ms. Lagarde says that all trade taxing between the world's two largest economies would cause about $455 billion depletion in global gross domestic product, a loss larger than the G20 member South Africa's economy. In the meantime, the IMF also expects the global economy to grow slightly from the current 3.3% this year to 3.6% in 2020, but she says the projection is vulnerable to trade tensions, uncertainty over Brexit, as well as uncertain recoveries from Argentina and Turkey. That's Business News tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwaldo. It's back to you, Amarachi.
Thanks, Anne. Time now for some international news. Here's Juliana Olainka with Around the World in 5.
Good evening from the Channel's newsroom in London. World leaders have commemorated the 75th anniversary of the D-Day landings, which helped bring about the end of World War II. The US President Donald Trump was among those to join the Queen and the British Prime Minister at the event in Portsmouth. Leaders from the 15 countries that fought alongside the UK were there to honour the largest combined land, air and naval operation in history. The ceremony, which was Theresa May's last official engagement as Prime Minister, included theatrical performances, a fly past by the Red Arrows, and emotional testimonials.
Adieu. La mort m'appelle. Je ne veux ni bandeau, ni être attaché. Je vous embrasse tous. C'est dur quand même de mourir. 1000 baisers. Vive la France.
A letter from Captain N.W.G. Skinner. I can imagine you in the garden, having tea with Janie and Anne, getting ready to put them to bed. Although I would give anything to be back with you, I have not yet had any wish at all to back down from the job we have to do.
President Trump read a prayer that President Roosevelt read to the nation ahead of the D-Day landings.
They will need thy blessings, for the enemy is strong. He may hurl back our forces, but we shall return again and again. And we know that by thy grace and by the righteous of our cause, our sons will triumph.
And the Queen paid tribute to the heroism and courage of the veterans of the invasion and those who made the ultimate sacrifice.
It is with humility and pleasure, on behalf of the entire country, indeed the whole free world, that I say to you all, thank you.
Forty bodies have been recovered from the River Nile in the Sudanese capital following a violent crackdown on pro-democracy protesters. A medical group linked to the opposition says the victims were among 100 people killed after troops stormed a camp on Monday. More than 300 others were injured. There are fears a paramilitary group is attacking civilians. Sudan's ruling Transitional Military Council has promised to investigate.
Free citizens, the past few days have witnessed sorrowful events resulting from the Joint Security Force efforts to deal with certain threats and security complications. Unfortunate events followed, resulting in the fall of victims and of injured. We are sorry for what's happened. We pray for the souls of the martyrs and hope the quickest of recoveries for the wounded. The General Prosecutor has been directed towards investigating these events.
A funeral has been held for a 5-year-old boy who was shot by policemen in Ukraine. He was killed when two officers who were allegedly drunk fired weapons at cans and bottles in a courtyard of an apartment building last week. The child died on Monday. The policemen have been arrested on suspicion of murder. Indian authorities have been forced to call off a mission to recover 5 bodies from the Himalayas. High winds have made it impossible for helicopters to access the area where they were spotted partially buried in snow. A man accused of shooting dead 4 people in Australia's Northern Territory is thought to have used a banned firearm. The alleged gunman was arrested in Darwin after shots were fired across various locations. Police say they've identified 8 crime scenes. The suspect was on parole and wearing an electronic monitoring device during the attack.
I saw a guy in a high-vis shirt walk out with a rifle. He's turned and looked at me, and I've run into the bedroom, locked the door, and we've hid in the bathroom. And we called the police and just heard shot after shot after shot.
And federal police have raided the headquarters of the Australian Broadcasting Corporation in Sydney. The ABC says the action is linked to a series about alleged misconduct and unlawful killings by special forces in Afghanistan. It's described the search as an assault on press freedom.
To have a warrant executed on the headquarters of the national public broadcaster in this way, I can't state it enough, is an unwelcome development. It is really serious, and we take it very, very seriously.
Finally, an injured hiker was left feeling very dizzy when a rescue effort in the States went drastically wrong. The 75-year-old had hurt herself on a mountain near Phoenix, Arizona. But as helicopter crews airlifted her in a basket, it started to spin wildly, going faster and faster. She found herself in an out-of-control spin, which lasted about 40 seconds. A local fire official says she was treated for nausea, but was unharmed from the ride. And that's your international news around the world in 5.